You know, it's funny. We actually have. It's in a weird way kind of refreshing in terms of the preference points this week because, for the record, sub, neither dub. That's how the distribution went this time, which means only 1 point difference between that. And I just realized I did not give. And I did not jot down the numbers. How silly of me. Oops. We are at 40. The score is currently 40-31. Which you might think is a little odd, but this is coming from somebody who's actually, trying to critique the dub and trying to remove any biases from his equation. It's why the sub is still winning, after all. But you know who's losing in this case? Me, because I have to keep talking about this obnoxious jackass that some people actually that swear has fucking nuance to him, and I'm sitting here watching both versions of Noah Kaiba, asking the question, "Where's the fucking nuance?" Because it sure as fuck isn't in this is dorky little shit with a fucking god complex. Now, granted, this episode didn't really. Well, okay. As a couple of aspects of this three-parter pissed me off, but the episode itself did not actually piss me off. This isn't really a bad episode. It's just dragged down by the fact that this piece of shit that dares to call himself the villain, which is not the real villain, but again, and in 2 weeks we'll get to that. The problem with Noah, in a nutshell, is that there is no actual nuance to him whatsoever. And that is a hill I will die on. He is just egotistical. He is egotistical. He has a god complex. He's especially if you go with the Japanese version, he is effectively just an AI gone renegade. At this point, an AI who thinks he's human, no less, because that's just a great combo. And, oh yes, he's a fucking hypocrite. Even though if he was actually logical, well, he'd see the hypocrisy. He flat out even like Atem flat out points it out to him at the end in the fucking dub, and I much prefer that chewing out of Noah as opposed to in the sub. In the sub, Atem is just like, how dare you toy with the Kaiba and Mokuba's emotions, blah 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 blah. That's standard thing. In the dub, he flat out calls out the hypocrisy. Flat out calls out the hypocrisy that Noah displays. He's by capturing Mokuba, brainwashing him, and then using him as a fucking human shield. We'll get to that later. I hate this. I hate this little shit, and that is why he is the third worst villain in the entire show. Obviously, he's the worst villain we've encountered so far, but he's third worst in the overall show from memory. We'll see if I think there's anything to either Darts or Siegfried, who take the second worst and worst slots. That's respectfully. He But I fucking doubt it because everything I've heard about Grand Championship is pretty much is the fact that apparently 4Kids changed like practically nothing for Grand Championship. They changed a lot of shit for the Doma arc, but of course, uh, that's also because, well, they had to alter specific things because even 4 Kids didn't think that some of the ideas that the Doma arc has are very good. But I'm getting way too far ahead of myself. After all, we still have to deal with Alcatraz Tower before I can and start renting my face off for 40 episodes. Obviously, it's not going to be 40 weeks from your perspective, Hective, because nobody's gonna want to sit there and listen to me rant about. Nobody's gonna want to sit there and listen to me rant about Fate of the Pharaoh for 3 fucking weeks. Nobody's gonna want to sit there and watch me rant about My Freaky Valentine for 3 to 4 weeks. And certainly nobody's gonna want to sit there and watch me bitch about a duel with darts for 5 weeks. Nobody's got that kind of patience. Nobody I've met anyway. I will spare your brain cells and get that done in one video. That is my solemn vow. Which actually leads me to a point. Why am I splitting this up? Why am I doing the Kaiba versus Noah duel instead of the Yugi, not including the Yugi versus Noah part in this? Two big reasons for that. One is the name scheme. The dub calls this Brothers in Arms and Noah's Final Threat, respectfully, between the Kaiba duel and the Yugi duel. Right, effectively treating it like a different duel, a different multi-parter altogether. Even though it effectively is a 5-part story, it is split up into 2 different multi-parters. Similar to how modern Doctor Who would have, for example, a 2-parter, and one would be named one thing, and another would be named another. Probably the most famous example would be from Series 4 and the episodes The Stolen Earth and Journey's End are the ones that come to mind immediately when I think of that. But there's also others like Human Nature and the Family of Blood. I always get mixed up on that. The names always escape me. And even some of and then there's also ones like the Pandorica Opens and the Big Bang, and I'm getting way off topic. The point is that I am basically splitting this up because that's what the naming scheme in the dub is for. Now, when we get to GX's 4th season, I'm going to have to play that a little more by ear. But what I'm probably going to do is I'm probably going to follow the same rule, a similar rule to what the dub has followed here with with Noah. When it's a different duel, I will chop there and then continue. And effectively it will be, okay, how much do I have to talk about within a single episode? Now with GX I kind of have the benefit of, well, GX episodes tend to be pretty dense, and most duels only, are usually done and over with within an episode or two. There's very few duels that go past 2 parts in GX. In fact, off the top of my head, I can't actually think of any. Now that I'm actually sitting here and actually pondering it, I'm like, at absolute most, I think it's maybe the final battle in the Society of Light arc. But even then, I'm like, I'm like, did that last multiple episodes? I don't actually remember. You know. Because again, that was when they realized, oh hey, these duels don't actually have that much substance. Maybe we should trim the fat a little bit, which is actually a major problem with that. Now admittedly, I haven't actually run into the seriously you could trim the fucking fat happening with the virtual world arc, because the virtual world arc for the most part has been pretty good in terms of pacing. Certainly better than season 2 was. Season 2 was just garbage in terms of pacing. I'm sorry. I'm not going to sit here and fucking lie to you. Season 2 was badly paced. I could easily shave so many of those fucking multi-parters down to one. Cut those multi-parters down by at least an episode. In most cases. He says, Master of Magicians coming to mind immediately when I say that. Master of Magicians, Playing with a Parasite, and Double Duel are the three that always come to mind when I think of that. You know? Never mind the fact that even some of the finals matches could have been trimmed down. Cough, cough, mind game, cough, cough. That was just 3 episodes of pain, you know? Admittedly, it was my declaration of that was a lot weaker when it came to whatchamacallit, but at the same time, right? So I'm gonna talk about the duel itself first. I'm gonna save the Noah's cheating thing for a bit later. I will mention it, but I won't. But I won't really get into it until we start analyzing. Well, there's no nice way to say this. I have nothing to analyze with Seto in this episode. I don't. Seto cares about Mokuba. There, I just boiled down all of Seto, everything that everything that Seto says or does in this episode can be boiled down to that one simple sentence. Noah pisses Seto off because Seto loves Mokuba and Noah's a cheating asshole. Well, and using Mokuba as a fucking human shield. I'm never letting that go. That's always been my biggest hang up. Ever since I first saw this arc, that was always the thing that made me hate Noah's guts so fucking much. I must prove I am superior. I must not cheat. I must not allow my subordinates to cheat. Fast forward to the duel with him. I'm gonna cheat because fuck you. I know some people might take umbrage with me saying that. They might say something to the effect of, Blue Wolf, he's a villain. Or, yes, but he has reasons. Here's the thing. I have been watching this sack of crap for the better part of... This is episodes 17 through 19. And season 3. Okay? According to Crunchy rules, and by extension, 4Kids' numbering scheme, right? So, for the past 19 episodes now, I have been watching both versions of this character, and I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. There is no fucking nuance with this little piece of shit. None. I don't see what other people see in this. With this, I find it almost, I don't want to say laughable, but it drives me insane. It really does. It drives me insane to think that this little shit is considered a match for the characters we have been facing so far. And again, I feel like if this arc was not badly placed, we could kind of roll with it a little bit more, right? And kind of, and we could even create some nuance and make this, to to somewhat quote myself a little bit here, use this as his well, paraphrase myself, I should say. We could use this arc as Kaiba's results, as Seto's results screen. Now I know. Now on the off chance, obviously, okay, sorry, I shouldn't say on the off chance, but like, because there's a pretty high chance that if you're watching this, you've never seen my Ruby videos. Don't go looking for them. They're old. They're terrible. They're awful. Awful. They're not worth wading through. 500 videos, including a shit ton of VODs, as to go back through. But the point is that during those I was covering Rooster Teeth's Ruby, and I was covering a character named Weiss. Okay, Weiss is a bitch in Volume 1 of Ruby, also known as Season 1. But like, I don't want to argue semantics. Okay, Volume/Season 1 of Ruby, Weiss is a bitch. There's no hand waving it. Weiss is a complete fucking bitch in the first season. Okay. Then she goes through a character arc that basically lasts all the way through the entire Beacon arc, which is volumes 1, 2, and 3, where she is getting nicer, she is getting more polite, right? She is effectively growing closer with her teammates to the point where when we actually get to her in volume 4, now volume 4 is just showing off the results of her character arc, the results of her character growth over the course of those 3 volumes/seasons, depending on how you score it. We could have had something very similar with Seto, right? Have him just kind of slowly grow, slowly grow, slowly grow, and then you can have the Clash of the Colosseum. If you use hate to overcome your past, you'll never grow, kind of thing. And then bam, we can show in the virtual world arc that Kaiba has overcome his hate. He's overcome his hatred of his stepfather. He has overcome all of this anger and is all of this nastiness. He is bad. He is now the Seto Kaiba who can run Kaiba Corp honorably and well, and not ever have it lapse into, well, effectively being in a few legal permits away from effectively being a frickin' black market, or a black market weapons dealer. Which, I mean, let's face it, Kaiba Corp might as well have been before Seto took over. Military grade weapons. Ugh. I went over all of that in the previous videos, so I'm not going to rehash that here. I'm not going to waste your time. But what I am going to say is, I fucking hate Noah. So let's go through this stupid creation duel and continue it, right? So, Seto tries to use his giant Virus and Crush card. Chiron the Mage destroys it, which makes me actually question a thing I wrote, but that's not important. Let's just say I wrote a thing where I actually used Chiron the Mage, and well, in that story I was also a villain at that point, but that's neither here nor there. What's funny is that this actually has some cards that I actually used to see a lot during my lunch breaks when I used to duel in high school. Cards like Vampire Lord, Fisher. Although Fisher, that was just because of early starter decks and the like. Dragon's Rage was one that I used to use. Who's we'll get to the Dragon's Rage stuff a bit later because that's actually cool. This is where Different Dimension Dragon makes its debut. Slate Warrior makes its debut here. And then there's also the first time we see a monster known as Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon, which, fun fact, was actually like my ace monster when I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden Memories. That is not a very good PS1 fun game. I know a lot of people are fond. A lot of people are fond of it. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. If you're gonna play that game, either play the modded versions or play it with cheats. You will thank me later. Trust me, because that thing's grindy as fuck. So, anyways, so Kaiba counters with Vampire Lord. And Slate Warrior, but Earthshaker makes him destroy one of them. Of course, he chooses Vampire Lord. And then all of a sudden, Noah decides, okay, now I'm going to activate my Deckmaster ability and make it so that Vampire Lord can't resurrect because he's no longer in the graveyard. I'm sorry, what? Like, fucking excuse you? Why wasn't that just always active? Also, Joey complaining that he got rid of Vampire Lord. Or it's like there's so little difference that it's not even worth bitching about, Joey. Like, come on, it's 100 points. Oy. So yeah, then so Earthshaker does that. He floods the field to get rid of all the monsters. Shinato's arc pops out, and that's the end of part 1. Then in part 2, Shinato's arc reveals that it can summon random monsters to defend him by putting the defensive wall in front of him. A lot of wasted time in this thing because in between these moves, they yap and yap and yap and yap and yap and yap about Noah's backstory and shit, and it's just like, okay, you're wasting time at this point. Fuck off, you know. Oh, then Seto defends himself with different dimension dragon. Hagen calls out twin-headed thunder dragon, which then prompts Shinato's arc to defend Noah again. Which, fun fact, which was exactly what Seto was waiting for, because he activates Dragon's Rage, which is a continuous trap that makes it so that gives all dragons on your side of the field piercing damage. Oh, you're trying to defend with a defense position monster? Well, sorry, but you are going to be inflicted with damage anyway. Which is kind of ironic that kind of something I wish his Seto leaned into more in his duels instead of trying to always go for crush card. Like, seriously, there are so few duels where Seto has not gone for crush card, or it's kind of ridiculous. Like when he was using his proper deck and not a test deck, right? He will try to use it multiple times. Now, granted, usually when he has a stronger power, he goes for trying to use that instead of the crush card combo, which is my preferred thing because it's just. I think the problem I have with it is the reason why the writers have to come up with any way they can to get crush card to either fuck up or fail is very simple. If they don't, well, then the duel's just fucking boring. Oh, he won because he destroyed everything. He destroyed the deck. Okay. And take it from somebody who's played, has off and on played casual Yu-Gi-Oh for the past oh god, we're creeping up on a decade at this point. For the past decade or so. Having your opponent deck you out is not fun. Watching somebody win by decking their opponent out is not fun. At least not as far as I'm concerned. It's boring, I mean, yeah, sure, the novelty of it is kind of fun if you manage to do it in say, in say one of the older Yu-Gi-Oh games. But at the same time, it's like that's just if that's all we ever see at a Seto is him just constantly freaking decking his opponents out. That's boring. It's actually one of the reasons why I was actually more intrigued that how few deck out how few deck out uh, victories we've actually had overall in the entire franchise, right? Because I can literally only think of three off the top of my head. Two of them are in DM, and the third one's in GX, right? Now, granted, actually, what's funny is that in Pyramid of Light, Yuki comes close to decking out, doesn't he? But regardless, I think one of the biggest problems I have with Kaiba always going for Crush Card is that, again, it's boring, and I would have preferred it if he went into more dragons and power. I mean, in the sub, Noah literally calls it a goddamn power deck, not a virus deck. So, yeah, you know. But then Noah brings out his second cheat, hypocrisy. We'll get there. We'll get there. When we analyze Noah, that's when we have to analyze his cheating, including one that I want to call a cheat, but I can't. But that's beside the point. So yeah, then that leads us into part three. Which of course, Seto doesn't finish his attack, which would have killed, which would have won him. And then the mocking in both versions show that Noah is actually the weak one, in my blunt opinion, because seriously, where the fuck is the nuance in this little shit? Somebody fucking answer me that. Where's the nuance in this little fuck? There is none. He's a bratty little fucking jackass with a god complex. He was that way in the fucking dub, and he's that way in the fucking sub. And I also hate the narrative trying to bend over backwards to justify this shit. I actually prefer Seto basically saying I wasn't using you, who I trusted you. But whatever. Then Blue Eyes breaks the mind control, and yay! Last turn activates, which I want to call Noah calling on Shinato, King of a Higher Plane, as the replacement deckmaster is cheating. But the very last duel we talked about, which was the merger of the Big Five, yeah, that makes it so that I cannot. And the reason why I cannot is because, well, Yugi and Joey. Now, more so in their defense, that was more so a case of them fusing their deck masters together, and that was an established thing all the way back in the thing. But Mirage Knight, unfortunately, is the other side of that coin. So, yeah, either way, I can't call Shinada, the King of a Higher Plane, a cheat. I want to, but I can't. And then Atem calls Noah a fucking coward in the dub. I agree. I absolutely fucking agree with that. Now he doesn't. I don't. He doesn't flat out say coward. Call him a coward. He basically just says, "All right, let's duel fair and square. Here, I will take Heikaba's place. I'll inherit his deck and yada yada yada, and then we'll finish this duel fair and square. Because you didn't prove your superiority over Seto. Edo, you pulled a move that you yourself said your father would never accept. So, fine. Face me, and I will show you, I'll give you a chance to prove your power. Which will, of course, lead to Noah's final threat, which we'll talk about next week. I'll touch on that a bit more later, because now that's a good segue to go into just talking about Noah in general. I have nothing to say about the beginning of part one. It's stupid. Moving on. So, Noah's backstory. Noah died in an accident, and his memories got transferred into an AI. Now, in the dub, it is his mind got digitized, and in the sub, it is just flat out, yeah, this is not Noah. This is effectively Noah 2. If you understand the distinction, this is not the original Noah. The original Noah is in fact dead, and that's part of why uh, Gosaburo abandons this version of Noah, because it's not his real son, and thus that's why he focused on Seto, right? The problem is that Noah effectively went stir crazy because he was effectively in an echo chamber, complete with a glitch that literally had that the ice cream lady fucking repeating herself. Elf, you know, because, well, as Crump himself said, it's the fakeness of it all that gets to that gets to them, right? So, although I do still like Kaiba's point that it's hard work that got Seto where he is, because that is the fucking point here. Here, the point of the matter is that Noah was handed everything on a fucking silver platter, including the knowledge of the universe. Let's just be real about that. Whereas Seto had to build himself up from the dregs, right? He had Noah was effectively put in a cave, or sorry, put in a lab with a whole bunch of fancy equipment and said, you know, go make an Iron Man suit. Whereas Seto Kaiba built an Iron Man suit in a cave with a box of scraps. Now, I know it may feel like I'm using that meme incorrectly, but I mean that sincerely. Think about it. Seto, for all intents and purposes, had to crawl his way out of the gutter. He did. He had to crawl his way out of the gutter in order to become better, right? To effectively become a better person and all that. The problem that arose ultimately was, how do I phrase this? Was that Seto, Noah keeps claiming that he is superior to Seto, that he is superior, 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 right? He keeps saying that, but he's not. He's not superior to Seto at all. Now you might be asking, what do you mean? The only reason Noah thinks he's superior to Seto is because for all intents and purposes, thinks he thinks he's getting what he's owed. It's that whole ego thing, right? Seto does have an ego, and I will be talking about that extensively when we get to to Alcatraz Tower. But the problem is that he has an ego that's different from Noah's. Noah is, I want everything, 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 because I am entitled. Seto's ego is the past doesn't control me, even though it totally does. That is Seto's form of that. Is Seto's ambitions are there. They are. He is an ambitious person. But the funny thing about Seto is that he is egotistical, almost to a fault, But at the same time, he still understands, he still has more of a grasp of humanity than Noah. Because, like I said, Noah was handed a whole bunch of knowledge on a silver platter. Seto had to crawl his way up out of the dregs. And that's kind of my problem. That is ultimately my problem, right? Noah thinks he's superior when he's not. And it's just and it's that lack of humility that just pisses me off. The lack of humility combined with his hypocrisy, right? There are villains that are egotistical, and they relish, and they relish in their, in their epicness and all of that, right? But the problem is that Noah cannot back up his power. He can't. He claims he can, but he can't. He just can't. He thinks he's superior, but what he really is, and spoilers for next week, what Yugi will expose him as, is a frightened little child who was always a spoiled little shithead that needs to get the fuck off my screen. I do not understand why Noah is a popular character. A somewhat liked villain within the franchise. I don't know why people fucking like him so much. Because again, he has this massive fucking ego, and he thinks the fact that his tragic backstory fucking justifies everything. Seto's got the right of it when he says that he's trying when he says that he's trying to beat Seto to justify, acting like a god to justify his tragic past. Seto prefers to move forward into the future and not the let's change people's hearts and minds with tech. Heck, getting some serious SAO vibes, but in a good way, right? There's a reason why part 1 is absolutely a point for the sub. But the problem is that basically right as soon as the God complex thing came into play, I was like, eh. And then part 2 just kind of doubled, tripled, and quadrupled down on that. That, like, the backstory basically shows this Noah AI is evil. Just straight up evil. And will have a fucking 11th hour heel turn. Or is that a face turn? Or whichever one's the wrestling term. Whichever one's the wrestling term for being a good guy, right? Noah will become a good guy at the 11th hour, and it just fucking pisses me off. Hell, Noah in the sub even admits that he brainwashed Noah. But let's talk about the last. But now let's talk about the last thing I have to talk about, and that is his blah, blah, blah. That is his hypocrisy. The final nail in Noah's coffin as far as whether or not I'm ever going to like him as a villain. Noah is a fucking hypocrite. There are very few things that I cannot stand, and I try to avoid as much as possible, and hypocrisy is very high up there. Okay? I try not to be a hypocrite. Am I a hypocrite sometimes? Unfortunately, yes. But I try to get better. If you point out a hypocrisy, I will be like, oh shit, you're right. I apologize. I will try to be better. You know? I will try to move forward. I will try to correct the hypocrisy, and I will own up to it. Okay, I've been a bit of a hypocrite. Okay, I need to correct this. Right? Now, most hypocrites won't do that. which usually means it's more the person is mistaken rather than them being a hypocrite. But the problem is that Noah's a hypocrite. He thinks he's superior, he thinks he's strong, but the problem is that he has to use cheap tactics instead of just being better. Which is kind of ironic when you think about it, because Crush Card and a camera that won't fucking focus. Focus, you stupid camera. There we go. God, I hate this webcam sometimes. So I apologize for the lack of focus, but nobody watches these for my ugly mug anyway. And then a depressing thought came in that nobody watches these. If you're watching this, hey, could you do me a favor and comment? Even if it's just something stupid like eggplant. I don't know. Anyways, my point though is, it's the same problem I actually have with uh with whatchamacallit, with oh god damn it, I'm suddenly out of I'm Crush Card. There it is. I don't know why I lost that out of nowhere. It's the same problem I have with Crush Card, right? Crush Card, Kaiba's deck is supposed to be about power, and yet he's got a cheap tactic like Crush Card. What? You know? That's my problem with Noah's hypocrisy in a nutshell. You're supposed to be superior, so why do you have to use underhanded tactics to win? If you're superior, there should be no problem, right? You should just have superior tactics, superior firepower, or whatever. No, you rely on cheap tricks. And in the duel against Yugi, you'll rely on spirit monsters. And cards that will cause many, many issues. I shouldn't say cards, but a card that literally helps create the fucking ban list, the actual forbidden side of the forbidden and limited list. Yeah, because that totally proves you're superior, huh, Noah? I agree with Dubatem when he says that it's fucking bullshit. You're a goddamn hypocrite, and you are a fucking punk. But if you want to fucking actually, you want to actually fucking prove your superiority, then face me. I beat Kaiba. So go ahead. I beat Kaiba, and I'm the only opponent that Kaiba has ever lost to, fair and square. So face me, and we'll finish this duel together. We'll finish this battle with honor, right? Unless you're too much of a hypocritical coward, who's good for nothing more than pissing a blue wolf off. And the others are looking at him like, "Are you nuts, Yugi?" And it's like, well, it's either that or just submit to Noah now. This is the only fucking choice we've got, it, guys. So, how about y'all shut the fuck up and let Yugi do this? Like, come on. But whatever. As you can tell by the title, this isn't really a rant view. This is just me ranting for 3/4 of an hour, because I really do not like this 3-parter. It's not one that I ever will watch again. I remember the Noah duel, the Yugi version of this duel being much better, or at the very least has a much better finisher. Oh, we have to talk about that graceful charity, hit that final graceful charity move. We gotta talk about that. Like that is the most like ridiculously, mind-blowingly dumb Heart of the Cards moment I have ever seen in my life. But we'll talk about that next time when we finally put Noah as a villain to bed. Sort of. We'll get there. But I kind of have a headache now, so I don't know if I'm getting to it this time around. Actually, I can tell you if I'm going to get to it today or not. That's because I kind of have my thing right here. Well, no, okay, I could hold it off until next time, but if I'm doing that, I'm definitely knocking out So Close Yet So Far, or out next week too. But regardless of any of that, I'm done ranting about this episode. Like I said, a point for both versions this time, but honestly, just a giant loss for myself. Let's hope the duel with Yugi goes a bit better. Until next time, this is Blue Wolf Alex of the Lore Walkers signing out. Have a good one. Duel stand by.